What is happening, my party people? I'm your guy, Halsey Schider, and welcome to another episode of the Helicopter Podcast. Big shout out to our platform at MHM Publishing, the Vertical HeliCASTS platform. If you haven't checked it out, please do. It's my podcast. The Hangar Z, which is law enforcement focused with John Gray, and of course, The Real Rescue with Jason Quinn, aka Quinny, and yours truly at the Helicopter Podcast. Today, I am joined by a friend of mine. Actually, it's a friend, but it's a guy that I don't actually know all that well. So I think it's kind of fun to have these conversations because we were kind of worked together for a little bit at Maverick, and then we've parted ways, and we've seen each other randomly at different points, but we don't stay in touch all the time. So I think this is a fun way to connect. So Jameson Ault, welcome to the Helicopter Podcast.
Yeah, it's good. I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, happy to have you. Remind me, correct me if I'm wrong, but you're one of the lucky guys that's like are you in your hometown now flying air medical?
Yep. Yeah, I'm in Spokane. My wife and I are both from Spokane. And we've been back here for about 2.5 years now. And yeah, I feel real lucky. It's great to be back. And, we got family close by. So we got 2 kids and we've got built-in babysitters 15 minutes away, which is great.
Awesome. How long is how far is the drive, the commute to get to your base?
It's just under an hour, maybe 45 minutes if traffic is light, 55 minutes if it's heavier. And that's totally fine. It's an easy commute. It's all on the freeway, so it's easy.
Gives you plenty of time to catch up on the Helicopter Podcast, I'm sure, right?
Yeah, I've got a couple of episodes on my phone downloaded, so that's what I listen to. I've got that, then a couple other audiobooks or podcasts or whatever. So, but yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's awesome. I always tell people if you can fly air medical and have your commute be no more than say an hour and 10 minutes, I think that's pretty good. I say an hour and 10 minutes because my commute at my last base was an hour and 10 minutes, and I did it for a while, and I didn't mind it. I like driving. I listen to a lot of audiobooks. It does, though, add to your day, right? So it's like your duty day starts, at 8 for me, right? Or when I was working at that base. But, really it starts really 2 hours before that because you got to get out of bed, you got to shower, you got to get on the road. So it definitely can exacerbate some of the fatigue that comes into air medical, but all in all, under an hour, that's pretty good, man. It's that's not always the case for air medical jobs.
Yeah, I feel lucky. I'll put up with an hour commute to be back home in my hometown. We lived in Pennsylvania for 3 years, where I flew air medical as well, and my commute was like 8 minutes, and that was like that's amazing, especially after a long night of flying. Do 5 or 6 hours of flying overnight and you're just beat and you have an 8-minute commute back home. It's hard to beat that.
Yeah, that's definitely pretty nice. But rare. It's not common.
It's not common. You're right. It seems like most people are closer to the hour mark, but yeah, I don't mind it. It's good. I'm happy to be here back in Spokane. It's totally worth the commute.
Something interesting with you is a lot of my guests that I've had on that have been civilian trained, kind of similar guys like myself, went to a flight school, Hillsboro for me, lots of guys from Leading Edge, Upper Limit, which is not around anymore, but whatever, everyone kind of more this flight school, like a school, a trade school, call it.
Yeah.
You went to a university, right? You went to University of North Dakota?
I did. Yep.
First and foremost, what is the mascot for that university?
That's a very controversial question.
Really? Why?
Well, for a long time, they were the Fighting Sioux.
Ooh.
Since their inception, back in the 1800s, I think they were the Fighting Sioux. And a lot of people take pride in that mascot and a lot of people hate it. And it's been in litigation since like the 80s.
Really?
Yeah, actually, when I was there, the governor, Jack Dalrymple, signed a state law saying they were not legally allowed to change their mascot from the Fighting Sioux, and that got thrown out. And now we're the Fighting Hawks, which is I think is a lot less controversial. And there's still a lot of strong feelings about it. So,
Do hawks really fight?
yeah, I don't know. I think they're, I don't know. Maybe they can be aggressive, but
I guess. Yeah, I mean, this is a non-political platform, so I won't share my thoughts on that whole story. But that's interesting. So UND, go Hawks, go Fighting Hawks, I guess.
Fighting Hawks, yeah.
First and foremost, what is the climate up there, man? Was it cold? Was that a cold winter?
Yeah, it was a cold winter. North Dakota is a really interesting place to live. We were there for 6 years, and we planned to be there for 2 and ended up turning into 6, which I can tell that story in a little bit here. But, we moved there in July of 2011, and it was like 85 degrees, 90 degrees, and probably 100% humidity. And it just felt awful. I mean, it was like everything is sticky and you're just sweaty the entire time that you're there. And then in the wintertime, it's like 6 solid months of winter, and it's very, very cold. I mean, it's not unusual to get temperatures of like minus 30, minus 40. And it's pretty rough in the wintertime.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Where does the humidity come from in North Dakota?
So apparently it all comes from the Gulf of Mexico.
Really?
So there are, air movements from the Gulf of Mexico that just bring all the humidity up into the Midwest. And, there's no water around. I mean, we're close to Minnesota, the land at 10,000 lakes. But yeah, everything comes from the West in the summertime. And I guess there's just enough flow kind of from the South.
Pushes it up. That's insane. I've always wondered, because I've been in the Midwest, I've been to North Dakota, and I'm like, why is it so sticky here? Like I live in Central Oregon, pretty close to the Pacific Ocean, right? And very not humid actually where I live. And even in the valley, which is, on the other sides of the Cascade for me, it's not very humid place. So it's kind of interesting. One of the fun facts of being a pilot to me is like you learn like enough about weather to know more than like the average person, but you still don't really know a ton.
Right.
Or at least I don't. I don't know about you and your weather knowledge.
I'm in the same boat as you are, Halsey. I took a meteorology class when I was in college, and that's where I picked up this little tidbit about where does the humidity in North Dakota come from. We had a really, really super sharp meteorologist. He's actually a guy from Spokane. I took that class when I was here in Spokane. He used to be a news reporter and a news meteorologist, and he was just
that's cool.
Phenomenal professor and gave us all sorts of great insights, which I sadly don't remember anymore.
Yeah, I did 1 year of college, and I want to talk about your college experience.
Yep.
But my funny meteorology story, and I think I've said this in a previous podcast because I had a gal on. Her name is, I think, Jessica Birch, I believe. It's been a minute, but yeah, Jessica Birch. She's a meteorologist actually in San Francisco. One of the top CBS. It's a big affiliate.
And a National Guard pilot, right?
Yeah, and a National Guard pilot. And so she came on the show, and she went to Embry-Riddle, and we were reminiscing that the meteorologist professors there was a couple, husband, wife, and their name was Dr. Snow.
Oh, fitting, yeah. There's only one career you can do with the last name.
Doesn't get much better than that. So I'm curious, what led you to go to the university, Jameson, and what was that university experience like? You said that you initially were going for 2 years, but then you said for 6. Were you only going for like an associate's, or like, I guess just tell me the whole experience.
Yeah, it was a convoluted path that led me to North Dakota. I've wanted to fly helicopters since I was a kid. I mean, just like any of us in the profession, a lot of us were drawn from an early age. And I tried to join the Army out of high school to fly, and it's like, I don't know, a 2 or 3 month process to go through warrant officer selection. And I got through 99% of the process. The very last thing they did was the eyesight exam for me. And of course, they were not happy with the fact that I wore glasses. There were some waivers that I could get, and it ended up not working out for me. So I had a good friend who was a pilot for Horizon at the time. And he said that University of North Dakota made excellent airline pilots. And if you're interested in flying, that's a great college to go to. And he knew a number of grads. And fortunately for me at the time, UND had a satellite campus in Spokane. So you could do 2 years of college at a community college, and that was like your first 2 years of UND. You know, it was all UND ground schools, meteorology, all that kind of stuff, and get through your multi-engine rating. So that's what I did. I got about halfway through my instrument rating, took a couple of years off to save money because I just paid for everything out of pocket. When I got married, my wife and I made the decision that I would go back and finish everything. And so did that and went to UND, the main campus in Grand Forks, North Dakota. And yeah, I had my 2 years of college done. And I was like, okay, I can do my junior and senior years at Grand Forks campus and be done. And that turned into a 3-year plan because I eventually switched to helicopters. You know, I was doing airplanes in Spokane, and I saw these little Hughes 300s buzzing around the campus at the airport. And I was like, I got to do that. It's been my dream, and I've just never had the money for it, but I've got to find a way to make it happen. So that turned into like a couple of extra semesters of ground school and stuff. And I ended up instructing for the university for a long time. I mean, 5 years of instruction to get my hours and the experience that I wanted. So it was a good experience for me. I loved UND. I'm really happy that it worked out the way that it did. I would have been happy to serve in the military, and I have a slight amount of regret that I never was able to. But UND was an excellent school. My wife has been just ultra supportive of the whole journey and has followed me from place to place. And I mean, we had been married for a year when I was like, yeah, let's move to North Dakota. And I think we were both woefully ignorant about what that entailed. Yeah, the winters are no joke back there. And we were like, we can do this for 2 years. Like, you can do anything for a couple of years, right? And then 6 years later, we're like, we got to get out of this place.
Yeah, that's hard. I mean, climate is a huge part of enjoyment of life. Yeah. One of the reasons I live in Central Oregon is because I like the climate here. I tolerate it. I love the summers and I love the winters. You know, they both make me equally happy. Something that we don't touch a ton on in the podcast is like this idea of relationships and girlfriends or wives or husbands or partners, whatever they are. In your case, you know, girlfriend to wife. I think maybe a lot of my listeners are maybe younger and, they're just getting into this career path, and the path looks pretty fun and exciting, utility, fire, all that fun stuff as a single person. And then as you get a little bit older, you might get married, you might have some kids, you know, ideals change.
Yeah.
What kind of conversations were you having with your girlfriend at the time that's now your wife about like what your dreams and goals were about being a pilot? Because like obviously she seems like she was really supportive, but that's because you probably had been kind of pushing that narrative the entire time, right?
Bell is proud to sponsor Vertical HeliCASTS and their vision to hold meaningful mission, safety, and best practice conversations in the helicopter industry. The lessons learned from these conversations will undoubtedly shape the future of both new and veteran helicopter operators.
Yeah, I'd say that she knew what she was getting herself into in terms of my desire to become a pilot. And I think that there was probably a lack of information. There was a big void about what different parts of the industry actually entailed. So we went to North Dakota with the intention of, you know, my dream had been to fly helicopters. And very quickly it was like, well, that's off the table. The Army doesn't want me. I'll fly airplanes and become an airline pilot. And then maybe at some point later in life, I can figure out a way to make helicopters happen. And my wife very graciously, I think she got tired of me complaining about not flying helicopters. And she said, if you want to do this, let's actually make it happen. She made it happen. And, you know, I think the emotional support, the impetus, the willingness to kind of go along with that. And I think we were both very ignorant of what the industry entailed. I had a couple of friends that were flying EMS at the time, and in North Dakota, the bases they were flying at, they were doing like maybe 40 to 50 hours a year of flying. And I was like, there's no way I'm going to do 40 or 50 hours a year of flying. EMS is like nothing that I'm ever going to do. And I thought utility or, construction, firefighting, something like that would be awesome. And the more I learned about EMS was like, man, this is a nice, stable lifestyle. The utility industry, I've got a good friend that flew sky cranes for a long time, a couple of friends that fly sky cranes still. And that's like my dream, like fly a huge, awesome helicopter, do some utility, firefighting, and you're gone for 14 days and then you're home for a couple of days, maybe. And it's just not family friendly. And so that very quickly became, for me, with my priorities, it became something that was not really feasible. You know, I've got a wife. We wanted to start a family when we were in North Dakota. We kind of talked about that, and getting back home to Washington was a priority for us. So the more I looked into it, EMS started to look more and more attractive. And of course, I flew in the Canyon with you for a couple of years, and that was a good way for us to get some experience. And yeah, you got a gold coin, man. I never got one. You get 2 of them. Wow. They must have liked you.
I have 2 Maverick gold coins.
Man, that's not an insignificant accomplishment. That's worth mentioning.
I have it on my desk and I play with it because I'm a fidgeter.
Yeah.
So I don't bring it out just because of our call. I'm just always fidgeting with it, and then you brought it up, so I had to, flex my 14 karat gold
That's awesome.
Maverick coin. I have 2 of them. I lost one. I don't know where the other one. Yeah, this is the only one I can find.
Get it right to Dwayne. Call Dwayne and get another one sent to you to replace.
Fun fact: I'm going to see Dwayne in 2 days.
Oh, no way! That's awesome.
Yeah, I got a client that's looking at 130s. Kind of decided between B4 and T2, so he's going to go experience each airframe with Dwayne.
Cool. That's
awesome. So I've been talking with Dwayne and Joe, and yeah, so it's kind of funny. And then Ian Sweat is on my team now. He's a sales guy with us. So I like to rub it into him that I have 2 gold coins. So it makes me far superior than him, at least. So that's always good.
No, you're twice as good. He's got none. You've got 2, right?
That's how it works. Yeah, I mean, the relationship part is hard, and it's not an uncommon thing I've said on this podcast before, is like this idea of where utility sounds really fun, but in practicality, it's maybe not, right? On the relationship side, at least. And some people make it work. We've had a couple guests that like have a scenario where husband and wife are both pilots, and they work for the same utility company, and they're on the same schedule.
Wow.
And so they have the same work days, and they have the same, non-work days, which I think is pretty cool. So flight instruction for 5 years, that seems like a long time.
It is a long time.
I did flight instruction for a long time too, but for me it was, I lived in Oregon. I grew up in Oregon. I had been kind of moving my way up in the ranks at Hillsboro. I was doing instruction, but I was kind of on like the higher end of instruction. I was also getting to do a lot of other fun flights. And then also, of course, charters and some of the turbine aircraft they had. So I kind of had that incentive to stick around. But were you like 5 years of straight instruction?
Yeah. I think in my 5 years of instruction, I did, I think I did 1 PR flight in the airplane. I flew an airplane up to a fly-in when I was doing fixed wing instruction. And then I flew the helicopter from Grand Forks down to Fargo for the Fargo Air Show with a good friend of mine, Mark Kennedy. He and I flew the helicopter down to Fargo together. And it was a great time. And I think those were probably the 2 flights that I did that were like non-student instruction flights in my 5 years.
How many gold coins did Mark Kennedy have?
I'm sorry. He's probably in the same boat as me. He probably doesn't have any.
What's up, Mark Kennedy? Read and weep. Read and weep.
That's right. Well, I got none also. So he's and I we're in good company together.
Okay. What's up, Mark? You have to tell Mark I say hi. I haven't seen Mark or heard from Mark in a long time. I like Mark Kennedy.
Yeah, I keep in touch with him. He actually came over to my place, I guess 3 or 4 days ago. He lives in Montana now. And he and his wife are coming through, and they've got kids. We've got kids. So we had a little play date with the kids together.
Where's he flying?
He's in Helena, Montana. He actually has not flown in about 2 or 3 years. He's switched to computer programming. And I will give him a lot of kudos because, speaking of relationships, I think he realized that the flying was not conducive to the family life for him. His wife is from Montana. He's from Northern California, I think.
Kirsten?
Yeah, Kirsten. Yeah. And it was just not a good fit for him and the family. They were back east flying in Pennsylvania. I kind of dragged him to Metro with me. And he tried it and said, EMS is not for me. It's kind of hard. The sleep schedule, don't see the kids as much as I'd like to with the sleep schedule. And he didn't want to do that anymore.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, you have to make life decisions.
Yeah. He prioritized his family and kind of the quality of life, which I admire him for.
Yeah.
Not an easy decision to walk away from flying. So, yeah. So I flew with Mark in North Dakota. We were instructors together. He left for Maverick in 2016. I left in 2017. So I did a little bit more instruction. I was at a disadvantage when I started instructing because I had done all of my helicopter training as add-on ratings. So I had maybe like 500 hours of airplane time, and then switched to helicopters and did my commercial add-on, which was like maybe 55 or 60 hours for me. Got my commercial and then did my CFI add-on, which was like another 15 or 20 hours. So I started instructing helicopters with like 70 or 75 hours of total helicopter time. And that was a real steep learning curve for me.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it was fun. I loved it. And I wish I could take credit for the foresight of doing add-on ratings. It saved me a ton of time and money in learning to fly helicopters. And I'm dual rated, which is nice. But it's just the way that it worked out for me. I did all my multi-engine in Spokane, all through multi-engine. And then did my CFI when I got to North Dakota and the airplane, and then started instructing. And I went to talk to the chief helicopter pilot, and I was like, how much is it to get my private? And he was like, oh, it's like 20 grand or whatever. But why would you do that? You've got a commercial, just skip private and go straight to commercial. I was like, what? I had no idea I could do that. So he opened my eyes to the fact that was possible.
Was that Wes?
No, actually, it was two chief pilots ago. It was a guy named Mike Krotz.
Okay.
And Mike was just on his way out. He was retiring. In fact, I think he retired before I even finished my CFI. And then the chief pilot that I worked under at UND is a guy named Ron Depew, who was he's a retired Army guy, did like 30 plus years in the Army between active duty and National Guard. And a fabulous guy. I still keep in touch with Ron. Last time I was in North Dakota, which is a couple years ago, I looked him up and had breakfast with him.
Very cool.
And yeah, and he treated me really well. But yeah, Wes is the current chief pilot. And I know Wes and his brother Ryan was also an instructor at UND for a long time.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and both great guys, both super sharp. And
yeah, Wes is cool. I've got to know Wes the last few years, 3 years doing, HAI. We do a lot of content for HAI, for Helicopter and the podcast, of course. And Wes does a lot of the UND content, and I think he does a lot of his own content. He's very talented, photographer, videographer guy. And he's super cool. In fact, I really want to get him on the podcast. So this is a good reminder that I need to get him on.
I'll bug him. I'll tell him to call you and get on the podcast with you.
Yeah, you got to tell him to hit me up.
I will.
But yeah, I need to catch up. So 5 years, I've been trying to get to the answer to this, but then I keep tangenting. I'm like a distracted squirrel, rabbit. So what took so long? Is it because of can you not fly in the winter or something because it's so cold, or?
Thank you to our sponsor, Precision Aviation Group. Mission-critical operators and fleet managers rely on Precision Aviation Group as a worldwide leading rotor and fixed-wing MRO provider. PAG provides tip-to-tail solutions in 4 MRO segments: avionics, components, engines, and manufacturing DER services. A single point of contact gives you access to over 150 million in inventory globally, 24/7. Just call 800-537-2778. Precision Aviation Group. Others sell parts. We sell support.
Yeah, there are a couple of factors. A, because I did my add-on ratings, like all the other instructors started instructing with like 200 hours, and I had less than 100. So I basically had, an extra 150 hours or something to make up before I got to that 1,000 hours of PIC time. That was a big part of it. A big part of it's the weather. North Dakota, it's a blessing and a curse, the cold is, because it gets so cold in the wintertime that you can fly when it's that cold. It's excellent performance in the 300. I was telling somebody the other day, like it's such cold weather that any aircraft has good performance. It could be like the worst aircraft in the world and it flies great when it's 25 below zero, right?
Yeah, I'm sure.
Weather is a big part of it. The Hughes 300 is an excellent helicopter. That's what all of my time was in. I've never even sat in a Robinson R44 before.
That's weird.
Yeah, I've got 2 hours in an R22, which is like when I was in Spokane in high school. My parents got me some flight time. The 300 is a great helicopter, but it went out of production in like 2011 or 12, and so the parts became really hard to support. And that was a challenge. We had a lot of issues. A big issue for us was you take a helicopter that's been sitting in a hangar overnight and it's like 55 or 60 degrees, and you drag it outside and now it's 25 below zero. That's hard on stuff, right? It doesn't matter what kind of helicopter it is. It's hard on your car, it's hard on your helicopter, hard on your snowmobile, whatever, right? Very frequently you'd cancel a flight for maintenance, like something would break on the aircraft. One of the other big factors for me was just bad timing. So when I started doing my CFI, they had two huge contracts, one with Army ROTC and one with the Saudi Ministry of Interior. And so they had like 75 Saudi pilots they were going to put through commercial training. And that contract ended. I think they finished the last student like maybe 2 or 3 weeks after I got my CFI.
Oh, bummer.
So it was a huge bummer. And I mentioned Ron Depew earlier. To his credit, he saw this and was like, we need to transition from contract-based training to undergraduate-based training. And so he, along with Wes, who obviously has a real knack for the marketing stuff, they both did a really, really good job of recruiting students and trying to get undergrad students, kind of getting the word out to high schools and started going to job fairs and career fairs and stuff like that. And within a year, the student population had gone from maybe like 2 or 3 undergrad students per semester to like 25 or 30.
Oh, that's crazy.
Yeah, they did a fabulous job of marketing that and making sure that people were aware of the program. And for a long time, they had relied on the ROTC contract and the Saudi contract. The ROTC stuff got cut because of the government sequester that happened in 2012 or 13. And that hit me hard. I was an hourly instructor, right? So I was full-time, but I was hourly, not salaried. So I got paid however much I flew.
That's hard.
Yeah. And so, one semester they're like, hey, good news. We got you 2 students. They're undergrad students and they're self-pay. Like they're not taking out student loans. I was like, this is going to be miserable.
Yeah. This isn't good news.
No, it's not good news. Everybody was in the same boat, right? We had like 1 or 2 salaried instructors still from the contract days. And they very graciously, gave up a lot of their student load to make sure the hourly guys could get some flying in.
That's nice.
So that was a big part of it. It was, I think my worst year there, I flew about 200 hours, 204 hours or something like that, which is not bad. But again, when you're hourly, that's not amazing either.
Yeah, it's so funny because I guess the UND that I know is such a big helicopter flight school.
I got it was just like this weird little glut that I was in.
You were just in the in-between.
Yeah, I was in the in-between. And kind of to my earlier point of like, Ron was very forward-thinking. Wes is very forward-thinking. Like they're both career flight instructors. Fabulous, fabulous pilots. And I think being a chief pilot in the administrative of a program comes down to a lot more than just flying skill and being a good instructor. And both of those guys excelled at saying, we want to run the program well, and we want to take care of our pilots, and we want to take care of our students. And so when I was there, they had all Hughes 300s, and now they have an all R44 fleet. And Ron, when he was a chief, like his last year before he retired, basically said the Hughes 300 is unsustainable in terms of the parts and the fact that we're so hard on it. And it was challenging for instructors like myself coming out of UND. I didn't have any R44 time, right? So I can't fly Robinson. I can't instruct in one without 50 hours. I can't be PIC without 10 hours. And Wes and Ron together went to the director of flight operations, a guy who was at the time was Dick Schultz. And they're like, we need to make this program sustainable and transition to a Robinson fleet or something other than the Hughes 300. It was hard for them to sustain that.
Yeah, it's interesting. I have like 100, 150 hours in the Schweitzer.
Yeah.
I actually just, I think the episode has dropped. By the time this episode drops, the episode has dropped. My interview with David Horton, the new CEO, still new. He's been around for a while. It's bought out. He's part of the buy team.
Yeah.
That bought it from Sikorsky. And they're doing a lot of good things to help with parts and production. And it's really an iconic brand. And so out of respect to David, I mean, I only say nice things about Schweitzer because I'm rooting for him. But that said, I've said this before on the podcast, and I say it when I give people advice when they're looking at schools. And it's not just with Schweitzer. Instrum,
the G2s, the
Cabri, it's like the problem is the SFAR, and so many companies, flight schools and say, tour operators that might be operating the 44 or whatnot, they use Robinson product. And so it's like, if you learn at a school where you're in the 300, and that was probably part of your issue, is like, man, I can't go anywhere else to teach. Like, this is where I can teach.
Yeah. For me, it was I got to the point where we were like 3 years in, maybe 4 years in, and I had like 500 hours of helicopter time. And I was like, man, if I'm doing 200 hours a year, that's going to be a long haul. And my wife was like, do you want to look at other flight schools around the country? And there's a place somewhere in Oregon, like Newberg, Oregon. I can't remember. Precision. Yeah. They had 300s, maybe still have them. And I kind of
they're all Cabri now.
Okay. Yeah. Bristow Helicopters down in Florida, they have a huge fleet of 300s.
Yep.
And I was like, I'm not sure, I talked briefly with my wife about like, should we stick it out here or try and move to Florida? And we ended up deciding to stick it out for a number of factors. But yeah, to your point, Halsey, the 300's back in production. And when I heard that, I was like, great, like UND can go back to the 300. Like, it's a fabulous helicopter. I have such a soft spot for that helicopter. I think it's the perfect training machine. It's bulletproof. And I think it's, I always say it's a little bit slower than the R44, even the R22. I think it's slower than the R22. It's got some little quirks to it. I think it's just the most fabulous helicopter for training. I'm really happy I learned in the 300. Why? Because it's very durable. It's rugged. I've seen students do things in that helicopter, or maybe heard about students doing things in that helicopter that exceeded many limitations. Like, I went up with a student once, and he was like, hey, which helicopter are we flying? I was like, hey, this is a tail number that we got. And he was like, okay, good. I don't want to fly this other one. And I was like, why? He's like, I can't say. And I was like, no, you got to tell me. And he said, I heard that one of my friends who went on a solo flight, his RPM was a little bit high, and he forgot what the throttle did. And instead of rolling it off, he rolled it on, and he got in the 300, the C model that I was flying, 3,200 was the max. He was like, he got it up to like 3,500 RPM before he realized his mistake.
Oops.
I was like, yeah, that's a bummer. And I was like, what tail number was it? And he was like, I don't know. I don't want to say anything else. And I tried to weasel some information out of him. And he wouldn't tell me anything. He didn't want to throw his friend under the bus, to his credit maybe. But I was like, man, we gotta maybe report that to maintenance and have some stuff done to that helicopter, have it looked at. And I don't think it ever got reported. I could never find out what tail number it was or when it happened, what student it was. And all of the aircraft flew fine. We never had any issues with them. So, right. It's a very durable helicopter. I did touchdowns. I did a lot of CFI instruction my last year or so at UND, and I've done like 200 touchdown autos with students. And that's fabulous training. I think it's an amazing helicopter. I mean, it's a little bit low inertia for touchdowns. It's a low inertia rotor system, but I think it's really important for students to do that, have the experience of doing touchdowns. And I was very fortunate that, the university trusted us to do touchdown auto rotations. We had to get certified to do them through our chief pilot. Ron would go up and fly with us and show us some tricks. Like, if your student does this, this is how you can recover. You can do this and this and this. And yeah, I was pretty cautious initially doing touchdowns, but the 300, it's a fabulous helicopter to do them in. I've done them with the 130 at Maverick. I did a couple of touchdowns, and that's it.
Yeah, I've done touchdowns in the Schweitzer, and then I did about 3 years straight of touchdowns in an R22.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
And so I look back at it too. I'm such a, I don't fly that much anymore, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So I couldn't imagine how horrible of a stick I would be now, flying a full down auto in an R22. I think about my 19 or 20-year-old self, 21, 22, doing that, like, kind of get scared. But yeah, I did a lot. It was a good experience. And, I agree. I like the Schweitzer. Were the Schweitzer that you were flying, did it have a governor, or was it still just correlator?
It's correlated. So, and the correlator was a kind of a funny thing. It did a little bit too much when you're at low power settings. So as you're raising the collective, you actually have to roll the throttle off a little bit.
Yeah. And
kind of like the mid power range, it does great. And then at the top, it doesn't do quite as much as it should. So you kind of have to roll the throttle on a bit if you're doing like a max performance takeoff.
Sure.
And I think that's another good reason why it's a good training helicopter. I know the R44, and I think the 22 is governed as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you still have the throttle. You got to do something with it, but I think it's a little bit lower workload than the 300. And I liked it because it forced you to fly the aircraft. You know, it was you kind of had to pay attention to some stuff. It was really easy to get into ground resonance in the 300. I got into ground resonance so many times. In fact, my very first flight as a CFI, I had a brand new student, and he had never even seen a helicopter before. Like, we're in the helicopter, I'm like slowly picking up. I'm like a little bit nervous because it's my first time with the student, you know.
Yeah.
And it starts shaking. It gets, you know, really bad into ground resonance, and I like yanked it off the ground. And he was like, "Is that normal?" And I was like, "Technically, it's not normal, but it kind of is."
Yeah. For the Schweitzer, yes.
The 300, yeah. And it's no big deal. I mean, it's I mean, I've seen them tear themselves apart on YouTube or something, but it's such a forgiving helicopter. It's got all these funny little quirks to it that it teaches you really good habits. It's a great helicopter. I was really excited when they went back in production. And like I said, I was like, yeah, UND can switch back to the Schweitzers now because they're back in production. Like, there's support for them again.
Yeah, and David's great. I really enjoyed my podcast with him. He's a super guy, very knowledgeable.
Yeah.
Like halfway through the podcast, I'm like, "Do you want to be my mentor?" Like, he's just an incredible guy. So
Yeah.
if you're listening and you haven't checked out the podcast I did with David, please check it out. Schweitzer is doing some really cool things. Schweitzer has a long history, you know, part of the Hughes family, and then it's kind of switched hands many times, including with Sikorsky. And so, yeah, it's very, very cool that they're back. And David, I think, took a lot of risk and financial risk to save and buy that company.
Yeah.
And so he's like a passionate guy. Like, talk about skin in the game. Like, he's
Right.
based on his resume, I think he probably could be having just a fine retirement and enjoying himself on the links and, you know, other things. But man, he's running a helicopter OEM. So good on Schweitzer.
Yeah.
So was Maverick your first job outside of UND?
It was, yeah. So I did my 5 years of instruction at UND, and then Mark Kennedy had gone to Maverick. I knew a couple other guys that went there, and I was like, this is a great way for me to get time in a turbine aircraft. Great way to get a lot of flight time in a short period. And so I applied in like the fall of 16, and Jim Ogletree, who was then the chief pilot, very graciously said, you know, "You seem like a good guy. Mark's vouched for you. Why don't you come back in January and we'll go through, you know, start your training class." And Grand Forks, North Dakota and Las Vegas could not be farther apart in many, many areas, right? Grand Forks is a little Class Delta airport. It's actually the busiest Class Delta in the nation because of the flight school there.
Wow.
They got 1,000 flight students at any given time on average.
That's crazy.
And the number of operations that they do in a day is like insane. It's off the charts. So going to Vegas, I was like, okay, I'm kind of familiar with like busy airspace, but I'd never flown in the Bravo before. And I quickly realized that flying in the Bravo in Las Vegas is like the easiest thing ever. You basically make one radio call. You're like, hey, I'm going to do the Tropicana departure.
Yeah, the Trop.
And then you do the Colville arrival, and that's it. You don't talk to anyone the whole other time, right? You go out and you talk to all the other aircraft. So that was easy for me. Going from a Hughes 300 that's like pretty comfortable at about maybe 65 knots in cruise speed to a 130 that's doing maybe 120, 125, maybe 130 in the winter if it's nice, good performance. And then you got all these passengers next to you. It was a pretty steep learning curve, as it is for a lot of people. You know, I spent a lot of time going over the manual and the books and all the GOM, making sure that when I show up at the start of the day, I'm kind of up to speed about what needs to be happening. And I loved my time there. I really enjoyed Maverick. I think, you know, Jim and Dwayne took a chance on me, and I hope that they got their money's worth out of me. I was there for 3 seasons. I loved it. You know, my first season, I think everybody for their first season is just kind of learning everything. Like, by the end of the first season, you're just like, please don't get yelled at by Dwayne.
Yeah, seriously. Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't do anything to piss those guys off.
Yeah. And, you know, I think it's interesting the progression that they give you, because like the first season, you're just doing tours. The second season, they maybe throw you a couple of charters. And then the third season for me, I got to mentor a couple of guys. Like, I flew out of Henderson 3 or 4 days a week. Which I loved because it was like a 4-minute drive from my house, and it's a little bit more laid back. You're guaranteed basically 3 flights a day. So it's a little bit steadier flight time, steadier tips. And I loved flying out of Henderson, but they would kind of throw some of the new guys out there sometimes that like they survived the babysitter program with Dwayne and Jim and all them. And they'd come fly out of Henderson, and you're like, okay, this is what we're doing today. We're going to do some, I don't even remember what the tours are anymore out of Henderson, but like there were some different tours. You kind of train them and guide them a little bit, and they trusted me enough to do that, which I enjoyed. You know, my 3 years there, I guess I was there just shy of 3 years, 2 years and 8 months or something like that. I did about 1,500 hours of flying, which was great. I loved it. I loved my time there. And it kind of set me up well in a lot of different ways for EMS, I think. So
Yeah, I like flying. I like flying out of Henderson. I remember like I just got comfortable flying out of Vegas, and back in those days, you would call like the day before, I think, to get your schedule.
yeah,
Like, you didn't know what times you were flying. It was kind of archaic. And I remember like, yeah, you're at Henderson flying. Da, da, da. I'm like, what? So I show up at Henderson in the morning, and they're like, yeah, just follow us, you know, and
yep,
here's how we do it. And so, yeah, I mean, it wasn't horribly different. And actually, it was I loved that flight. I loved taking off and going over that first big hill, and then kind of diving down past that hill, going into Boulder City.
yep.
And then I loved the flight home when you come back over the hill and you're zipping down, you know, low level almost, coming back into Henderson. That was really fun.
Yeah, it was a good time. I have a lot of fond memories from my time out there. I think a lot of people get burned out doing tours, and I certainly did after 3 years. I was like, I'm ready to move on to something different. But, you know, I take pride in all of my professional career doing flight instruction, doing tours, doing EMS, being like competent at my job, right? I want to show up and I want to know the aircraft well. I want to know the operation. I want to be good at what I do. I don't want to be one of those guys that they're yelling at or keeping an eye on. And after 3 years, I felt pretty good. Like they trusted me enough to train some of the other guys, which I thought was a nice compliment on their part. But I love flying out of Henderson. I did, like I said, 3 or 4 days a week. And not that I'm a perfect pilot, but you know, I enjoyed the fact that I was kind of off the radar. They didn't have to keep super close tabs on me. And I loved it. It was just a fun time to be out in Vegas and kind of a big new adventure. So my wife, kind of touching on an earlier theme, my wife, when we were in North Dakota, she worked full time, and I worked as close to full time as I could doing flight instruction based on weather and maintenance and all that kind of stuff. And when we got to Vegas, my wife was pregnant, and I said, just stop working. Like you've paid your dues. You supported me through 6 years of North Dakota winters. And why don't you just stop working? You could be a stay-at-home mom, and I will support us, and you can kind of relax a little bit. And so she really enjoyed Vegas for a lot of reasons. Met some other new moms. Our daughter was born there, and like, you know, play dates all the time, and just had a really great time kind of making a small community in Vegas, which was really fun for us. So I think it was more fun for her than for me, because I had to spend, you know, 12 hours a day flying to and from the canyon, which I loved, but just physically it's hot.
It's hot. It's tiring.
Yeah. You're like, I remember in the B4, it takes the outside air temperature down by 20 degrees if the air conditioner is working properly, right? So it's like 115 degrees outside, and it's probably 130 degrees inside the cabin because of the greenhouse effect. And you're getting like 95 degree air out of the vents. And you're like, this is amazing. This is great.
I remember during those hot summer days, man, I would drink so much water. My strategy was tons of water, and then I would wet down the little neck pads and put ice in them, or not the neck pads, but the hand wipes that we would give the customers at the bottom. Put that on my neck for each leg. And I drank so much water. I had a Camelback with me. Drink. Wouldn't pee.
Yeah.
Wouldn't pee all day because I was just sweat. Like there was literally no pee.
Right.
So it was like just.
Yeah, it's the same thing. I had this big liter. It's like a 1.2 liter bottle that I kept next to on the right side of my seat, so I could quickly grab a drink anytime I'm flying. And I would drink one of those every tour, right? So every tour I'm drinking just over a liter of water, which by the end of the day, 3 tours, you're drinking close to a gallon. And that was probably half as much as I should have been drinking. I don't know what the guidelines are, but yeah, I was in the same boat. Like, man, I can drink water constantly, and you pee like 1 or 2 times a day.
Yeah, it's weird.
And yeah, I was like, at some point I was like, this is probably not good for my body. Like I feel like this is a ticking, like I'm going to get kidney stones or something if I keep doing this, right? Or like have some sort of issue from just being chronically dehydrated.
And hot. Yeah. It's just, it's a hard environment. And something that I want to touch on that I appreciate you saying is I feel like, people look at tour jobs, Maverick, Papillon, Blue Hawaiian, whatever it may be, it's kind of like these entry level jobs, which they are. And that's great. But you have to be very professional on your mentality. And like you said earlier, like knowing the GOM and knowing the aircraft and knowing your emergency procedures. Like I personally took a lot of professionalism into that. And I think that is what made me successful during my training there, passing the check ride. The gold coins are silly, but I mean, I earned these for doing good things.
Definitely.
And so I think that that's like a good mindset. Like just because it's your entry level job, I mean, that should be like the most important job. And that's how you learn what it's like to be part of a 135 operator. You learn what a GOM is and an op spec and how the GOM complies with your op spec. You're learning about all these things that you're going to now carry into the next chapter of your 135 experience. And for you, that's flying air medical. So what does that journey look like for you so far?
As always, a special thanks to HeliCopter for producing this podcast. Specializing in helicopter evaluations, faster sales, and superb service, HeliCopter is the go-to agency for clients expecting immediate results. HeliCopter's team of helicopter professionals are the best in the business. Using their aviation expertise, a nationwide network, and a proprietary 76-step listing strategy, HeliCopter will convert your listing from Mayday to payday. Ready to get started? Text helicopter to 1-855-HELICOPTER. That's helicopter to 1-855-735-5226. And a HeliCopter pilot agent will reach out. HeliCopter. List it, sell it, done.
So after 3 years of tours, I said to my wife, like, I'm a very introverted person. So I need that time to recharge socially. When I spend time, 5 days a week entertaining people, and trying to make them have an amazing experience, that takes a toll just on me. So my 2 days off was like, I got to recover. I got to like go lock myself in a dark room and read a book or something. Right. So I was like, I'm ready for a change. It's time for that. And I wanted to go work for Metro Aviation. That was my dream for a couple of reasons. I'd heard that Metro was a fabulous operator. If all the people that I've ever talked to that have worked for Metro, I've never heard a single bad thing about them. And in addition to that, being from Spokane, Metro Aviation was the operator of Northwest MedStar, which is the EMS company that was in Spokane for a long time. And I was like, if I get my foot in the door with Metro, maybe I can work back to Spokane and go back to flying in my hometown. So in 2017, I resigned myself to a couple of years in the Canyon build time. The fall of 2019 comes around. I applied with Metro, and I told my wife, like, we can't move back to Spokane yet, but there's plenty of stuff open on the East Coast or the Midwest. And my wife was like, well, what about Indianapolis? I was like, the Midwest, like, do I want to go back to the Midwest? I feel like I'm just recovering from that. And serendipitously, I had passengers on one of my last tours who were from Pittsburgh. And I said, what is Pittsburgh like? I am thinking about applying for a job in Pittsburgh. And they basically said, it's a fabulous town. It's not like the industrial slum that you think it is, that people kind of envision being a steel city. And so I applied for a job in Pittsburgh with Metro. And my wife teases me about this all the time. We were laughing about this the other day. She was like, you basically made this big move across the country that like majorly impacted our family based on the whim of like having talked to a couple of pastors, like people that you basically didn't know at all. Like, Pittsburgh's great, you should move there. And I was like, okay, let's do it.
Yeah. Especially if they're locals. Cause I've had locals tell me that, oh, this place is great. And then I go there, I'm like, maybe right. It's an acquired taste.
Yeah. You're clearly biased. So I ended up working at a place called Clarion, Pennsylvania, a little town that's about 2 hours north of Pittsburgh by car. It's about 35, maybe 30 minutes north by helicopter. And I got hired to fly 135 doing single pilot IFR EMS. And, I said earlier that Jim and Dwayne took a chance on hiring me at Maverick. The chief pilot for Metro at the time was a guy named Brian Beeler. And that guy took a big chance because here I am. I had about 3,000 hours when I started flying EMS. I had no goggle time, no single pilot IFR, no multi-engine time, no EMS time. Like that was an interview question. It's like, you don't meet any of these requirements, justify your reason for applying here. And I apparently gave him a good enough answer to get hired. But yeah, he took a big chance on me.
What's the answer?
My answer was, I don't have any of these boxes checked, but I went from a Hughes 300 to an EC 130. It went from a Class Delta airport in the middle of nowhere to one of the busiest airports on the West Coast. I went from a very slow pace of flying to a very fast pace of flying. And my way of surviving that is to do exactly what I said earlier. I'm going to spend a ton of time in the GOM, the op specs. I'm going to know the aircraft inside and out. I have a vested interest. At the time when I moved to Pennsylvania, I had my wife and my daughter, and our son hadn't been born yet. But I said, I got two real big reasons for coming home at the end of the day, which is my wife and my daughter. And I'm not going to, this is not a cavalier attitude. I'm going to come here and be really super prepared, and I want to do well. And on top of that, I'm a blank slate. So I am the EMS pilot that you make me. If you guys want to train me to do things a particular way, I have no bad habits. I've got no preconceived notions about how things should be done. So I am here. I'm at your disposal to make the EMS pilot that you want. And he liked that answer. He actually complimented me on my answer. He said that was very well thought out and very well stated. And it was like, there was a lot of deliberation to that answer. Obviously I expected that question as part of the interview. And I really take that mentality to heart, knowing the aircraft well. I consider myself a professional pilot, right? I get paid to do it, which means when something happens in the aircraft, I have to be ready to respond to it. I had a professor in college who said, when an emergency happens, we don't rise to the occasion, we fall to our highest level of training. And I wanted that highest level of training to be like pretty high up there so that when something does happen, I can be ready for it.
Of course.
I want to train hard with my crews, and especially my first couple of months there, it was like, I went from a 130 where you literally just flip the switch to the on position and then crank it to fly and go, to an EC 145 where it's a modulated start. It's two engines. Like there's all this stuff to do in the cockpit. You got to set up your radios. There's 5 different radios to set up. You're putting in GPS coordinates. You got to do it fast, right? Because you're trying to get off the ground in 7 minutes to go save somebody. And so I would take one of the med crew, like they show up and oftentimes they're like, we're going to go do our stuff, check the aircraft, count drugs. And we're going to go take a nap because they got to work a 24-hour shift, right?
Yeah.
I'd be like, no, actually, you need to come out to the aircraft with me and spend a few minutes chair flying with me. Like, I'm going to give you the emergency checklist, and I want you to just flip open to a page and say something like engine fire in flight or, chip light or whatever the case is. And like, I'm going to go through the cockpit, touch all the switches, all the buttons that I need to go through the emergency procedure. We're going to turn on the radios. You're going to teach me how to use the FM radios, like do all this stuff. And really, really dove deep into that stuff to make sure I was comfortable flying the aircraft. And I think they appreciated that. I think they enjoyed the fact that I took it seriously and they want to see that the pilot they're flying with is going to be safe and competent. And I think they saw that on my side, and they liked it, which is good. I think I earned their trust by doing that.
I think I can go both ways. I can see my old med crew being like, I'm going to bed. You can go bounce in.
Well, I've gotten that too. There were a couple of people that were like, yeah, we'll go, we'll help you with the radios. Like I'm on tomorrow or next week. Do you want to try it then?
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, like today.
Like right now.
Like, yeah. Okay.
No, I think it's good to bring that professionalism. What is it that you like about air medical, and what are areas that you don't like about air medical? What are the pros and the cons of the job?
Yeah. So pros, first of all, I love the schedule. Doing a week on, week off is amazing. It's a long week on, and depending on how much you fly, it can be exhausting. You kind of finish the 7 days feeling worn out. But you get a week off. And like I said, I've got a son and a daughter. My wife, we live right across the street from a park. My daughter's elementary school is across the street, right? So it's a ton of family time for me. It's nice to be here and present for the kids. And if I was doing utility or whatever other kind of flying, that really is not the lifestyle, right? So I enjoy the lifestyle. It's relatively stable. I know bases open and close sometimes, but I'm working for Air Methods now, and they're treating me really, really well. I've got a great base. I'm close to home. Everybody's really kind. And one of the things I like most about flying EMS is that it's a tangible service, right? We're helping people. I remember flying out to the canyon once, and I had a Russian family, and they got out of the aircraft, they took a selfie, and they're like, okay, we're ready to go home. And I was like, I'm sorry, that's not the way it works. Like 3 other helicopters, we got to wait for them.
Yeah. You sit down and you eat your picnic.
Yeah, exactly. You're going to eat those little dried raisins or whatever,
I probably gained like 40 pounds eating those.
Oh man, me too. I mean, like everybody's like eating croissants and cheese blocks.
The croissant and cheese balls all day.
So, flying tours, it was fun. It's not the most tangible thing in terms of like, are you making the planet a better place? Are you doing a service for somebody? Sometimes you'd have the tours that were very meaningful and you'd have a great time doing them. But EMS, I feel like every time you go fly, you're doing something for somebody. It's because somebody needs some help. And I enjoy being part of that team. And I feel like I'm a very small part of that team. I'm just a chauffeur, right? I get to fly them around and they tell me where to go and what to do. And I tell them how I can do it in accordance with, the weather and aircraft restrictions and GOM and all that kind of stuff. But I like the ability to help people. So what do I like about EMS? I think that kind of sums it up for me. It's just a really fun job. What do I not like about EMS? The schedule is hard. It is a hard 7 days sometimes.
Are you straight 7 nights, or do you guys have like the 4-3, 3-4 thing?
I'm 3 days, 4 nights, which is a double-edged sword. So I don't see my kids when I'm working days. My daughter sometimes will stay up. I get home at like 8:15 at night, and she'll stay up, which, she probably should go to bed at like 7:30 or whatever. And so, but she wants to see me, and I'm happy that she stays up for me. My son is always asleep. So it's bittersweet when I'm working days. Working nights, I'm here at home with the kids. Like I take a nap. I'm staying up, not all night long, but I stay up late if I'm not flying, so I can be ready to go in case I do get a flight. So I'll take a nap for a couple hours in the morning, and then I got the afternoon to spend with the kids, and it's great. But you're tired. I mean, I'm functioning on less sleep than I would normally if I'm working nights, right?
It's just so hard to change your rhythm.
Yeah, and it's constant, right? You go from 3 days where you're flying all the time. I try and stay up late on Wednesday night, which is my transition night, and I make it to like 10:30. I'm like, man, I'm beat. I gotta take a nap or do something and try and wake up and switch over to nights. But it's hard. It really is hard to make that transition from your circadian rhythm. I know that nights, like working nights from a physiological standpoint, is not good for you. I think there's a lot of evidence out there that it's not very good for your body to do that. And I don't really mind that so much. Maybe I'm young and invincible. I mean, in my late 30s, so I don't feel young and invincible anymore, but I'm just ignoring those unpleasant side effects at this point, right? I think that I take care of my body. I try and exercise frequently, eat well. But that's always kind of in the back of my mind, is like, if I'm staying up all night and flying and being fatigued frequently, that it does take a toll. I don't feel like I'm fatigued when I'm flying necessarily. It's not like I'm dangerous to fly or anything, but I feel like you're not ever your best.
You're not 100%. I mean, there's no way.
Right.
I mean, I just don't think that there's any human that really adapts to it. So, I mean, definitely give and take when it comes to flying air medical, right? There's a lot of great things. I agree. The schedule is fantastic. But yeah, it's challenging. But the mission is fun. You're doing fun things. You're doing cool flight missions. Some of it's, your typical milk run, but being able to, land on a highway or land on a cool off airport somewhere else, really putting your helicopter skills that you learn to test are really neat. So, I'm glad that you're enjoying it. Jameson, it's so fun to talk with you. Good to catch up. Thank you for joining the show. Just like that, it's already been an hour. So it's crazy how quick that goes, but it's been a fun conversation and an enlightening one. It was nice to hear about your UND experience. So thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, it's been great. Thank you so much for having me. I feel really lucky that I am where I am. I know a lot of people would like to fly helicopters and it doesn't work out for them. And I feel very lucky to be where I am. University of North Dakota treated me great. I worked for Metro, I worked for Maverick, I worked for Life Flight Network, and now I'm at Air Methods. And I feel just really super happy that all those operators have been excellent top of the line operators and have treated me really well. And I'm just very blessed to be where I am.
Yeah, it's awesome, man. And you've worked really hard to be where you're at. And, in the brief time that we worked together at Maverick, I remember you being, taking it very seriously and being a true professional with it. which I think is important. I think that's the important part of being a commercial pilot, is being a professional pilot. To our listeners, thank you for listening to the Helicopter Podcast. To our sponsors, I appreciate you, of course, and to MHM Publishing and the Vertical HeliCASTS platform. Thank you very much. Continue listening, liking, subscribing. Check us out on social media. Peace. Thanks, Jameson.
Bell is proud to sponsor Vertical HeliCASTS and their vision to hold meaningful mission, safety, and best practice conversations in the helicopter industry. The lessons learned from these conversations will undoubtedly shape the future of both new and veteran helicopter operators.
Thank you to our sponsor, Precision Aviation Group. Mission-critical operators and fleet managers rely on Precision Aviation Group as a worldwide leading rotor and fixed-wing MRO provider. PAG provides tip-to-tail solutions in 4 MRO segments: avionics, components, engines, and manufacturing DER services. A single point of contact gives you access to over 150 million in inventory globally, 24/7. Just call 800-537-2778. Precision Aviation Group. Others sell parts. We sell support.
As always, a special thanks to HeliCopter for producing this podcast. Specializing in helicopter evaluations, faster sales, and superb service, HeliCopter is the go-to agency for clients expecting immediate results. HeliCopter's team of helicopter professionals are the best in the business. Using their aviation expertise, a nationwide network, and a proprietary 76-step listing strategy, HeliCopter will convert your listing from Mayday to payday. Ready to get started? Text HeliCopter to 1-855-HeliCopter. That's HeliCopter to 1-855-735-5226. And a HeliCopter pilot agent will reach out. HeliCopter. List it, sell it, done.